Arsenal end their 4-year trophy drought after defeating Chelsea 3-1 in the Conti Cup final. So, let's talk about it. It was a moment of deja vu for the Blues as they go on to lose another Conti Cup final, this time to Arsenal. The 3-1 scoreline is exactly the same scoreline that they lost to Manchester City last season. This means in the last 4 years, they've consecutively made it to the final, won the first 2 back-to-back, and now lost the last 2 back-to-back as well. For Arsenal, they finally get their hands on a trophy that no other club has won more than them, a solid 6-time record. The last time they had won it was in 2019 after defeating Manchester City. The year after that, they lost the final to Chelsea, which actually was the year that Chelsea got their first ever Conti Cup title. So definitely a lot of history roaming around this specific final. As we obviously know, the two met in the 5th round of the FA Cup final last week, with Chelsea cleanly defeating Arsenal 2-0 and knocking them out. Undoubtedly, that influenced Chelsea going into this Conti Cup final unchanged and having the exact same starting 11. For Arsenal, there was minor changes, such as having Noel Marit start in instead of Laura Wienwerther and switching over Leah Volti and Frida Leonardo Monum. Typically, Monum has been playing on the left side of Arsenal. That's where her majority of the threat comes. That's where her aggressiveness really shines. That's where she's able to best combine on the field, the players specifically on the left side. But today, seeing her in a different role in that right part of the midfield, for me, was the trick that really made everything work for Arsenal. The highlight of the game, and for me what won Arsenal this game, is their midfield. They were first to every single ball, they dominated every single duel, and they were incredibly composed and aggressive at the same time. Kim Little, for me, ran the show today. She is consistently one of the most underrated midfielders. I continuously praise and talk about how good she is into that midfield. I am a big fan of Kim Little. She's so composed, she's so calm on the ball, her work rate around in the midfield is absolutely phenomenal. She shuffles around the format, she allows regrouping. She's just so good. I mean, you talk about a midfield magic master, you really have to start talking about how good Kim Little is. Because of how good her stabilizing role was today, it really allowed Leah Volti to do what Leah Volti can do. She absolutely gave Lauren James no chance and no service and had her absolutely locked in. In a previous video, I talked about Leah Volti being one of the most two-footed players in the game. This is a common fact. She is one of the most two-footed, specifically in the WSL. She's so flexible and she's so adaptable that it didn't even look like she was playing slightly out of position in a way. Cut off every single pocket that could reach Lauren James. It cut off a lot of spaces that Lauren James usually runs into. And because Arsenal's midfield was pretty much winning every duel and was first to every ball, Lauren James was never in a position, she was never in a prime position to get onto the ball or to kind of have that snappy service that usually she gets. And you have to completely credit it to Leah Volti and Kim Little. Everybody has been talking about who is it going to take to stop Lauren James, and I think Leah Volti showed us a great clinic of how to do it. For Frida Leonardo Monum, I mean, just so aggressive. Looking at her numbers, she was the most involved in duels this game, which is not surprising because, I mean, she was putting her head in, her leg in, her foot in, whatever kind of body part she could get into that ball first, it was her. She had some really great battles with Erin Cuthbert, and I think she handled her pretty well. Erin Cuthbert is not an easy midfielder to be able to have a good day against, so you have to give props to Monum on that one. So involved in the attack, so involved in going forward, so involved in moving the ball forward. Just the whole dynamic of Arsenal's midfield, for me, is what really won them the game. For Chelsea, that's also where they lost the game. They were unable to hold possession of the midfield. They were unable to put good passages together. This is an unfamiliar thing. You look at Chelsea, they're super great in keeping the possession, but also having great passes and passages put together. This was not the case in this game at all. Right before the first half ended, we did see a switch of Buchanan come in and Kankovic leave the field just on the 40th minute mark. Formation changed. It was a 3-4-3 kind of formation. Niamh Charles pushed up forward, and you had a Buchanan, Bright, and Eriksson in the back line. I assume that was done to have a little bit more stability in that midfield and to have a little bit more aggressive given the nature of Niamh Charles, but I just don't think any of the duels were won by Chelsea today. They were simply not aggressive enough. They simply lacked kind of that, I want to get to the ball first, and in a game like this, you have to get to the ball first, right? We've talked about how close the margins are between Arsenal and Chelsea. It's all about having the ball the most amount of times, and it's all about delivering these balls into these dangerous moments. In my last video, I talked about how efficient Chelsea has been. And in a way, this was not the conversation this time because Chelsea just simply didn't get enough chances, or they didn't get chances to move forward. It was all Arsenal. And for Arsenal this time, they were efficient. When they went forward, they made sure to cause chaos. When they moved forward, they made sure to put themselves in a position where they could score. Sam Kerr's goal in pretty much the first kick of the ball showed you that if Chelsea can go forward, they will score and they will punish. And actually, speaking of which, that goal put Sam Kerr to be the first ever WSL player to score in 3 consecutive Conti Cup finals. So absolute magic work from Sam Kerr to achieve a record like that, considering she's only been in the WSL for a few years. Like, it's just absolutely wild. But looking at those Arsenal goals, that first goal by Stina Blackstenius, one, it's great to see her scoring on the score sheet. Obviously, she struggled to get on that score sheet. She struggled in some of those big games, but that goal to me looked like pure instincts. And in a way, I really enjoyed her score pure instincts kind of goal. I've seen a pattern where it looks like she almost overthinks her position, or overthinks when to shoot, overthinks what to do with the ball. And the fact that the ball just ended in her feet and she was able to calmly finish it was a great kind of, I'd assume, confidence boost for Stina. And then you start talking about the second goal. Great movement by Katie McCabe, clearly recognizing that there's a player behind her. Ingle, in a way, can do anything because she was already in that position, and then Katie McCabe is turning. Boom. You're putting yourself in a position in the box where you're creating some kind of chaos. It gives you a chance. It increases your chances of getting into a goal. When Kim Little's on the spot, she's going to score. Also tying the record for scoring the most amount of goals in a Conti Cup final, 3. So that ties her with Sam Kerr as well as Ellen White, who's now retired. Record is to be broken by either Sam Kerr or Kim Little, which I mean is just super fun to see. And then again, that third goal, it's off a set piece. Arsenal have recruited a new set piece manager, so it's great to see some of that work be reflected on the pitch. But how do you get into a corner position? How do you get into set piece position? You're causing chaos up front. You're putting yourself in a good enough position to score. They locked down the players that are clearly marked as dangerous, like Lauren James, and oddly enough, Guro Reiten didn't get a lot of service either, even though she was finding herself in spaces, and even though she was finding herself in pockets, and even though there was a lot of times that she was, far way ahead by Noelle Moritz. And if you're going to talk about pace, then Guro Reiten definitely beats Noelle Moritz. And we saw that happen multiple times on pace. If you're putting them on a race, likely Guro Reiten is going to get the best of her. But when you're not able to connect with your wingers because of that middleman in the midfield, then it's just hard to get them any. In fact, a lot of the generated balls from Chelsea were direct balls, specifically just to Sam Kerr. And in moments of crisis, that kind of does work great for Chelsea because they're able to get the ball to Sam Kerr, and Sam Kerr is Sam Kerr, and she can do whatever she wants with the ball. But when you're playing against Arsenal, who I thought had a great game defensively, I thought Hafayeli had a fantastic game. So did Leah Williamson. Shooting your shot and shooting that ball to Sam Kerr may not be the most effective way you're actually using the ball, because when you give away the ball like that, you've caused a turnover, and now Arsenal have got the ball again, and they can generate some forward movements. Similar thing to Guro Reiten. They would launch the ball up to Guro Reiten. Before you even know it, she's surrounded by 2 or 3 shirts, because they were just going direct from the defenders, launching a direct ball up to the attackers. It's simply too hard to execute against Arsenal, who were having a great defensive game today. For them losing that middleman, and for them to lose those 4 players that they had in the middle, specifically when they were playing that 3-4-3, it was hard to do anything that they wanted. And even when the substitutions came on, oddly, I don't think the substitutions actually made any good changes. If anything, I thought they killed the momentum. And it's kind of interesting to see Emma Hayes talk about it in the post-game interview, saying that all the players had a poor game. And for me as a manager, whatever I did, they were going to have a poor game. In a way, I think that's not the best response to this. Substitutions are substitutions because they're supposed to be game-changing, right? When you're losing 3-1, you want to maybe put one in the back of the net to build that momentum, to get that confidence going, even though that third goal probably killed the game off. Those substitutions need to come on and shake Arsenal a little bit. They want to move that formation a little bit. The substitutions, I don't think, did any of that. And so to come out and say, well, all the players had a bad game, all the players, weren't up to standards, I couldn't do much about it, it was going to be a long day in the office for me, I don't think that's the best way to respond to it. We could even argue that Niamh Charles, given how much trouble she did have in that last game against Arsenal in the FA Cup, I would have thought initially that Jess Carter would start. And this isn't to say that Niamh Charles didn't have a good game. I thought she had a decent game, but you want to switch it up a little bit, and you want to bring in a different defensive backline or a different look for Arsenal, who you just played 7 days ago. Obviously, they've sat down, broke it down, and when you come out with the exact same starting 11, I think you put yourself in trouble already there. Arsenal wanted it more. They executed it like they wanted it more. Defensively, they were super rigid. Leah Williamson and Hafayeli had a great game. In the middle, it was an absolute masterclass. Ingle and Cuthbert had just no answers for what Leah Volti and Monum were doing. Caitlin Ford, you have to give it to her for how aggressive she is, for how many duels she puts up. It's just incredible how many players she's able to pin towards her. Katie McCabe, I mean, the effort and just the absolute grit she puts into that is just super, super fun to watch. As a fan of the sport, Katie McCabe is everybody's favorite player. Yes, she gets carted off, and yes, she's into kind of those fights every now and then, but you look at her, she is fighting for the ball like she is never going to touch it again, and I think that's super, super fun. Maybe Chelsea wanted to have that variety up top, and when Bethany England is gone, Pernilla Harder is injured, Frank Kirby's also injured, they didn't have many attacking options. Obviously, they brought in Jessie Fleming at the end. Jessie Fleming is a player that I rate highly. I think she's one of the best superstars in the game right now, but definitely isn't having the best season, and definitely hasn't found her feet just yet. With that being said, I definitely back up Jessie Fleming. As a Canadian, I've got to back her up. But when you've got Jessie Fleming, a player who still hasn't found her form, and she is really your only attacking option, it's hard to expect much. But also on the same token, Arsenal are still hit pretty heavily with Viviana Miedema and Beth Mead out. We've talked about this very heavily. So we can make an argument for both teams on having attacking players missing due to injury. You start to really begin to think about that Bethany England sell. Did they really have to give her out? Was there any other options? That's an interesting conversation that has popped up, so I definitely want to hear your opinions on this. The thing that I do have to mention is we need to start seeing VARs and technology happening in finals. There was a few moments that you wanted to see VAR. Obviously, the linesmen, I think, had great work with recognizing offsides for both teams, but it was definitely at a lot of fouls, a lot of challenges between the players that I thought deserved bookings. But I mean, look at the game, it's growing. We need to have great technology. This final also included a 19,000 attendance record, a highest attendance record for a Conti Cup final, almost double what last year saw. The Arsenal and the Chelsea saga is going to stop for a second because the two are next going to meet in the WSL Matchday 21. There's 22 match days. For them to meet on Matchday 21 is definitely spicing things up and keeping us on our toes. But I would say we were definitely spoiled getting two matchups against the two in 7 days. Chelsea won one by knocking Arsenal out of the FA Cup. Arsenal came in with a statement. I mean, one hell of a statement, if I have to add, and won a trophy. Finally, a trophy that a lot of players in the squad have deserved. Just makes up for such a great storyline. It makes up for the very fun rivalry story that these two have. I want to know your opinions on this. I want to know what you thought of the games. Did you enjoy it? What were your thoughts on Arsenal absolutely running the show? What did you think Chelsea should have changed and come out with differently? I want to hear your opinions, so let's share them, talk about it. As always, to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to me here on YouTube, follow me on Spotify and Apple Music to listen to all the stuff for free, and follow me on Twitter. I will see you later.